Today on Drawbli,
Ben is drawing eggs.
click that subscribe button if you're new around here.
And comment below with ideas of what we can do to improve as artists.
Share your eggs online with the hashtag Drawbli.
And Ben, tell me about the eggs.
So you recently did the egg assignment where essentially we're taking a spherical object and we are taking a portrait with some cool lighting and we're trying to apply that same lighting scenario to our egg.
Yes, and you're using the JPEGs.
I'm using the JPEGs that you use.
That I used, which I think is a great choice because it's really always fun to see how we both go about tackling a different assignment and thing.
Remind me how many eggs you painted?
30.
30 eggs. I did not do nearly as many. I might have done 10.
Might have done 10.
I might have done 10.
10's a good number.
I don't think I even did 10. But this was fun. I enjoyed doing this. I'm glad that, one of the things that you said you got a lot out of this assignment was playing with blending modes and playing with masking a lot. I've been using that stuff for a long time, but I did find a lot of cool things in terms of just like workflow and what I enjoy using. This helped concrete some of that. Made it stick a little more.
So what did it concrete for you? What was your favorite workflow?
Well, I mentioned in the last video how like I typically end up not using a lot of blend modes because there's like this weird thing that happens, right? When you take let's say you have two layers, you have like a red paint and a green paint, and let's say you put the green on top of the red and then you fade out the opacity. What ends up happening is it desaturates that area because it brings those colors are like opposite and they like kind of crunch together into a desaturated gray, and you can lose a lot of your saturation in your image from doing that. So what I've kind of just naturally done from this, like not even necessarily understanding that like out loud, I just like use super saturated colors and then I fade them down with opacity, and that helps to keep it from like, look how bright that red is.
Yeah.
I'm using like the brightest red and then I'm fading it out and trying to find a good spot, and then maybe I'll adjust it and make it like a little darker.
Oh yeah.
But just playing around with those effects, mainly just using the normal layer, just not using any special effects and just kind of fading out opacity. So that's been like my go-to strategy for a while, and just kind of like concretely playing with that a little more here. Also playing around with like blending some edges to make things feel a little more painterly. That is something I'm still trying to figure out, something I struggled with a lot with this assignment, but it was still fun to do.
I also enjoyed that part of this assignment. Once I kind of got the hang of it, 30 eggs later. 30 eggs later. I did find it helped a lot to make my eggs look more appealing to me when I looked at them.
Yeah, well, it's not just like a perfect, oval shape. It looks very, it looks very fake. Like it looks very digital,
when it's not blended.
Yeah, it's like so perfect that it's weird. It's not as nice. So spending some time to like make it look a little more painterly does help a lot.
Right. Well, I was really excited to see what you would take away from this assignment because, I knew that you already had quite a lot of experience with lighting and rendering from, your work with Blender, because you take your ZBrush characters into Blender to do their final like lighting pass typically. So you've done that a ton. So this is kind of like, I don't know, in my head, this is taking your object into Blender and doing the lighting, but with a color pass.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, really, I think the thing with lighting is that you get to show off how well you know the planes of what you are painting, making sure that like the light is hitting everything correctly. Because, you can just mess that up slightly and then everything looks off. Everything looks completely weird.
You mean for sculpting specifically, or also?
No, for 2D. Like,
for 2D.
Because in 3D, the computer's like, you put a light in a 3D software, and it just like, it's gonna light it. I mean, you can light it poorly. There's still a lot you have to know about lighting and how to make it appealing, but you don't have to go in and hand paint each shape on your
each shape of where the light hits.
Fake 3D surface in this case, which is something that you have to do here.
Yeah.
You have to go in and you have to, control exactly where the lighting is. One thing that I did really take away from this assignment and enjoy about this assignment and thought I would going into it was thinking more about just where my light sources are in terms of painting a portrait. In the past, up to this point, I've just been like, okay, there's light here, there's shadow here, there's light here, there's shadow here, blah, 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 blah. But now I'm like, oh, I need to like actually recognize that there's all this light coming from this direction because of this light being over here. And I know about how far away that is or how big that light might be based on just experience in 3D software like you mentioned. There's a bunch of different, there's like 2 main rules with lighting. They're not super important, but they can help you figure out like, you know, if you got hard light, sharp like shadowed shapes on things versus soft light, you can kind of figure out how far away the light source is or how large it might be. There's some interesting things you can like figure out from that.
Yeah, definitely. So now you're going to be applying the light to portraits, is that right?
Yeah, I only sketch one portrait. I keep it very sketchy. I didn't really like how these turned out, but I think just the practice of doing it was very helpful. I've been talking a lot about this week how I've been just focusing on quantity a lot more, and this was just another kind of general step in that direction.
I like what you did here to really capture the difference in values of your reference image.
Yeah, I crunched the image. I squashed the blacks and whites to force the contrast on it.
That's really cool. And you've crunched it in a different kind of way here.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways you can like manipulate the image, but that was just to make sure that I was getting a read on it because the light on the face was so subtle, I was having trouble picking it up. So I was like, I'm gonna exaggerate this with the curves menu. So yeah, I've mentioned this before. I don't like this phrase in like image manipulation, but it's called crushing your blacks and whites.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what it's called. But essentially,
It's a very violent phrase.
Yeah, you squash the value range of your dark colors and potentially your light colors, depending on how you do it, and that can help make something like the lighting of your face more visible.
Will it matter that you want to apply a different lighting to this portrait?
So my thought here was that I was going to do a basic, like very subtle effect just to show off like a little bit of the planes of the face. It did kind of compete with the lighting that I created later, but I did end up fading a lot of it out. So I create 3 different lighting scenarios here for this one portrait, is what I wanted to do. Take one little sketch portrait and apply 3 different scenarios, 3 different eggs, if you will. And the first one was okay, the second one was terrible, and the third one was like fairly successful.
Okay.
I only show off this one though, because the other ones were a lot faster. The other ones took me like, the second one I really phoned in. It was like a few minutes that I spent on it.
I've had plenty of those.
I was like, this doesn't look good. I don't care. Next one.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Which is something we've been talking about a little bit, like not fighting your artwork, just moving on.
So why are you painting in just white here?
Because it's this very bright light that's going to be shining from this direction, but I, of course, don't use that full bright, and you can see I adjusted that white. I gave it a little bit of a yellow tint after the fact. So I'll often like paint in large swaths of big things like this purple color, and then I'll play with opacity, I'll play with, changing the value, the hue, the saturation slightly, but the main thing is that I'm painting where the shadows are. So I'm saying, here are the planes of the face, here are where these shadows should be. I'll figure out what the actual color and intensity of that color and opacity needs to be after. The important thing is that it's in the right place first. The rest is like, we can adjust it. It's on its own layer, it's not going anywhere, we can play with it.
I like that thought process though, of like...
But that's how I've always worked, ever since we started Drawbli.
It splits things up a little bit. So, because sometimes I feel like I get confused and I don't know what's going wrong in an area because my brain isn't telling me like, is it the values or is it the shape itself? Is it the hue? But if you split it into these very separate and distinct portions of working on it, then you might not as much run into that issue.
And then I went in and softened and blended a lot of my edges, and then I was like, oh, now I hate it. Oops. Oh well. No. So I didn't end up really. I think I ruined it by doing that. I should have kept a lot more of those hard edges in there. Kept a little bit of it, but I just it depends on the face, but you can get away with typically blending stuff completely on more feminine or softer, rounder faces. and angular hard edges tend to make things look a little more masculine. So I tried to avoid like making her look too like jagged and sharp, but I ended up not really enjoying it at the end anyway. So there's the first one.
Okay. I love the colors. I love the value shifts. I do see the egg. Oh.
This is the second one that I said I phoned in.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, not really. I kind of picked a boring lighting scenario, and I'm not really liking that one.
This is the one that I saw that I think was incredible.
And then this is the third one that I
love
spent a little bit on.
Yeah, no, this one I really, really love. I think you did a really good job on this one.
What is it about it? What did I do?
I like the in the face where you've put your darker values. You really see, I mean, obviously you know the planes of the face. You know what happens when the light hits the face at that angle. And you even the forehead where you have that taper of the light into the dark. I think that's just done so convincingly well. Like this is very convincing to me that you have the light coming from down below and it's shining up above, and it's like a soft light because it's letting these darker values exist here.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, I like that
I did
a lot.
it. I'm an artist.
I might also like it because like I tried the same lighting, right, for my own egg.
Yeah,
it's that
yeah, you
same
did.
one.
And yours turned out amazing.
So different than yours, but also like I liked how mine turned out. It was also very quick, but I really like how yours turned out.
Thank you. And if you want to like how your art turns out, you should click that subscribe button.
Yeah, and comment below with ideas of what we can do to improve.
Share your art online with the hashtag Drawbli.
And this is the part where we say goodbye.
Goomba. We did it. We're artists. We finally made it.
I want to draw like you.
I want to draw like you.
Aw, well, let's trade.
I want to draw like you. Sketch like you. Paint like you.
I do like sketching like me.